You just failed a major exam and you're feeling hopeless. Well, guess what? You don't have to be the most book smart in order to graduate with honors. I know this because I wasn't either. You don't have to be super smart. You don't have to have all straight A's, a perfect record. You don't have to have a lot of organizations. You don't have to be the class president. You don't have to be popular. You don't have to be so involved with everything in your academics. You don't have to be the jack of all trades. If you can manage all that, then that's great. That will get you going. But in my case, I certainly did not manage to do everything. I did not join a lot of clubs. I had a lot of failing marks. I grew up shy and not maximizing my potentials. And I knew I could have done better, and I'm not saying you should be complacent and stay in your comfort zone, but I was actually in survival mode for most of my time in college. But guess what? I graduated with Latin honors. I finished at the top 10 of my high school, and I passed the board exam with only 1 month to review. And mind you, I was taking up a pre-med course at one of the most hardest universities in the country. And I did that despite being the underdog, being shy, not having too much confidence, and having all these failing marks. I did that even though I was average. Sure, we have heard all of these study and productivity apps and all these hacks that we can apply when we study, making trances, making notes, reading this, reading that, doing active recall and all of that. Yeah, that's all well and good, but let me focus on sharing some of the mindset and habits that you need in order to really level yourself up and make sure that you are staying consistent, make sure that you are on the right track despite maybe feeling average. These are the things that you actually need to cultivate to rise above yourself, to rise above the limitations you think you have. You actually just have to play the game smart, and I don't mean book smart. And today I'll show you exactly how an average student like me made it to the top. If you're thinking that you're not enough to succeed, stay with me until the end of this video and you might just change your approach to school and how you handle your academics and balance it with your daily life. So first up, you have to detach and manifest. I have been practicing detachment and manifestation even before I knew about those concepts. I was always rooting for myself in prayers and daydreams and staying focused on my goals despite the outcome. If you also grew up shy, maybe you were bullied, maybe your self-esteem and confidence are low, then you must have a hard time carrying yourself in school, and certainly that was my case. I was trapped in overthinking and the fear of standing out. But even then, deep down, I still believed that I would be successful someday. And that's the first thing you need. You have to root for yourself before anybody else does. I spent most of my elementary and high school days holding myself back. Even when I knew I had clear potential, I still saw myself as average. I wasn't really maximizing what I could do, and because of that, I never built the confidence to really go beyond. I overthought everything and judged myself, and I skipped the opportunities like the extracurriculars that I knew I could have done and could have helped me grow. Although things got a bit better in college, but the shyness still stuck. And that was paired with being in one of the most hardest pre-medical courses or college programs in the country. I still felt very much average. But despite all that, I still managed to believe that I will still be successful and that I can work around these circumstances. I don't have to overcome my shyness and build this foolproof confidence, and I don't have to be the best in the room. And so whatever limiting beliefs you are still trying to work with and heal, you can do it while working simultaneously with your goals. You definitely need to strive for self-improvement and realize that you can do your own thing and slowly let go of the judgment and your insecurities. I was always in that process, and I have no regrets because I knew that I was doing my best at that time, even though I was not the most confident. But what really helped me push through was manifesting and detachment. And I let go of what I can't control and trusted that I would still be successful because that's how I see myself at graduation. I was always rooted in prayer and I was seeking guidance from God. But along with that is my constant daydreaming and the embodiment of the feelings that the most successful version of me would feel or would have. I always visualized how I would look after a major glow up, how I'd carry myself and the specific habits that I'd be doing in school and in life, and the things that I would be doing when I am already my dream person. How could I feel and bounce back if my grades are not what I expect them to be? Now, manifestation is not magic, it's alignment. And it is not so much about faking it till you make it, because it is about acting as if you are already that person that you want to become. I knew I could have embodied this more. It was still definitely something that I always did when I was still a student. And subconsciously, my actions actually aligned with my thoughts, and they were directed by these thoughts as I managed to conquer my fear of public speaking and by fulfilling leadership roles and different group tasks when I was in college. I eventually improved and saw to it that I was not underperforming despite still developing my confidence. Though let me say this, you cannot turn your manifestations into reality if your nervous system and yourself as a whole are not ready and are not committed to being that person. You can't expect to pass a test without reviewing. You can't expect to achieve something in school if you don't earn it. You can't successfully deliver that presentation if you don't prepare, or you really can't reach your goals if you don't put enough effort into it. Do you get what I'm saying? You ultimately need to be inspired by your desires and act accordingly. But a way to really level up your manifestation and efforts is with detachment. And no, it does not mean that you have to not be caring about whatever the outcome will be. It is not disregarding precautions or the impacts of our actions in our lives or in the lives of others. It is actually about believing in what you are doing and doing your best in order to rise above different challenges and shortcomings. It is now about freeing yourself of the outcomes of those situations that you are working with, because you know that you are doing your best. You need to focus on putting in the effort and not so much on how it will affect you when it turns out bad. You need to stop feeling like a failure when you get low grades. Instead, you should continue to be inspired by your failures and know that it is a part of the process. It is a sign that you need to level up and you need to do better next time. You are not defined by your low grades. You are building your character based on how you will rise above these shortcomings. So stop being too attached with the outcomes and stop thinking too negatively that even if you did your best, something bad will go along the way, because you cannot control the future. Even if you prepare so much for it, even if you put so much effort into it, you cannot really tell what will happen next. So instead, focus on doing your best and focus on getting inspired by your past progress and continuing to aim for better. Moving on, once you are set on your manifestation and detachment, it's time to focus on yourself. In school, of course, it is easy to get trapped to the comparison game. But you know what? The achievements of your classmates or the grades of your friends are completely irrelevant to your journey. This is very simple. You need to stop comparing yourself to others. You need to stop comparing your progress with your peers, with your classmates, with your friends, and everyone else. You should not be in toxic competition with anyone, and you should not aim for superiority. Aiming to be the top one, to be the best in your class, to have the most perfect grades, does not have to mean that you have to focus on the weaknesses of others and how you can be better than others in a toxic way. It should always just be about how you can be better than your past self. I think that was the mindset that really carried me throughout my whole student life journey, because I was only interested in doing better than my past self. I was only interested in improving my performance. I kept myself inspired by my achievements and by the achievements of others, because whatever success other people have does not have anything to do with my own, and instead I just chose to see what they have done and see it as a motivation for me to do the same. You shouldn't be jealous of what other people are achieving, because they have nothing to do with you. This will only hamper your progress and get you into a negative space. It should only be you versus you. Being focused on yourself also means not being selfish with your colleagues. You shouldn't be hesitant to lend a helping hand as long as it is within your boundaries. Because whatever you share does not take away from your own potential. Whatever you gatekeep too much will not get you ahead. Because understand this, you don't actually have to give everything you know or you have away, especially to those who don't even deserve it. For example, in a group work, you should be able to work with your team leader or with your members, or emerge as the leader yourself if you know that you can handle the task better than anyone. You should be able to contribute the right amount of effort and the right amount of hard work. You shouldn't look out for yourself alone and be a freeloader when there's a leader or there are other members who are carrying the group who are already working hard. You should be able to contribute equally. Or another example is sharing your insights and tips to others to improve in the next assessments. It won't hurt to genuinely help them and give them the advice that they need in order to perform better if you know that you can help, if you know that you have something in yourself that you can share in order to help others progress. Because you can do this without compromising your boundaries. You can do this without cheating and being unselfish. Moving on, you now have to work with your learning style. This tip has been given time and time again, and I am assuming that you are familiar with the different learning techniques, but my take on this is that you need to find ways on how your learning style will match your schedule and match the way you retain and digest information, and then doubling down on those techniques. What actually works for me is repetition as well as test taking. So what I do is spend 90% of my studying time in reading my notes, in familiarizing myself with the resource materials, and I also hardly ever write down notes or make flashcards. I just try my best to read the books and the transits in advance and make sure, for example, that I study for an upcoming quiz consistently daily, like around 3 to 5 days before the actual test. And I also take some practice tests and rationalize the choices and the correct answers or why my answer was wrong. Other ways you can do this is if you are into taking notes or making flashcards, then you might consider collaborating with your peers to lighten up your load, wherein you can set schedules and set internal deadlines. Or you might consider utilizing different applications like Quizlet for test taking while you're on the go, or when you have free time, you can insert these practice drills. And you might also find ways to study while you are working out, in a car ride, when you are outside and you have a little free time. You can also have mind maps, group studies, or podcast lectures while commuting or doing other things. You don't have to be counterproductive and you don't have to multitask, but what I'm saying is that you can always find a way to insert or to make time for studying and make time for doing the study techniques that work for you. At the end of the day, it is about finding and focusing on what will be effective for you, and I feel that it is actually counterproductive to spend too much time exploring different learning techniques when you already know what works for you. It is also counterproductive when you already have a lot to study and you have a lot of things to balance. So stop wasting time pretending that productivity should look a certain way. Although, of course, you always have to be evolving, but sometimes sticking to what works and improving that technique altogether can be more impactful. Moving on, you have to practice proper time management and balance. Sacrifice does not have to mean compromise. And as a student, your studies and your school commitments are on the top of your priority, but that does not have to mean that you have to make or divide your efforts unequally. There will be sacrifices, yes, but it should not go to the extent wherein your physical, mental, or your spiritual health or your relationships with other people are being compromised. You need to take care of those things in order for you to perform at your most optimal. Balance isn't a luxury, it is a necessity. You need to have time for rest, for yourself, you need to have time for your family, for your friends, for different events, and you need a life outside school. You actually can be an achiever even if you party or take vacations or pursue your other hobbies. You don't have to spend every school day and weekend just plain out studying because, of course, you still need to be on top of your responsibilities, but that entails also having proper balance and managing your time well. Moving on to actual practical advices that actually helped me in applying balance and that has worked for me. So first, what works for me to have accountability is to do time blocks with my tasks. And I do this by planning everything that I have to do in advance. I see to it that all academic commitments are done with the best efforts, and I show up to live my life with the same intention to unwind and to rest or to enjoy as needed. Time management is not just about ticking every task in your to-do list, and productivity does not always mean getting a lot of things done. It is about spending your time wisely and with intention and making sure that you are making meaningful progress no matter how small it may be. Second, and I think this is one of the most important, is that you have to save up a lot of good grades very early on in the academic year. You have to have some room for some unexpected low grades. You have to front load your efforts very early on at the start of the school year, at the start of the semester. I give as much effort as I can throughout the school year, and you should do the same as well, but I think it is a given that the lighter lectures and activities are given at the start of every semester, and the intensity just builds up along the way the more that they teach you more information. Also, once you really start to adapt well during the very start of the school year, then you will be able to cope up better with the change in the pacing and the difficulty level of the different lessons, because you already have a portfolio of proof that you were able to make it well at the start of the school year and you were able to achieve all these good grades. And those experiences and those grades will always back you up along your journey, and it will help you to navigate the challenges better. Next is study smart in a way that you should be familiar with the teaching and assessment styles of your professors, how they impart a lecture, and how they build their questions and their exams. Where do they get their teaching materials? Maybe some of the questions are based on a textbook. What type of assessments do they usually give? Matching type, true or false, essays, the list goes on, but essentially this means that you need to be able to base your study techniques and the way you review different materials on these considerations in order to be efficient when you review. For example, when the professor always gives multiple choice questions, practice tests that are in multiple choice as well. Practice tests that are in true or false if your professor likes this type of exam. And last tip is, if you are not a big reader like me and you have a lot of readings, because surely in our college program we did, then what worked for me is really focus on absorbing the introduction and the side notes as well as the different summary tables or guides in a textbook. And I do my own research and come up with my own summarized versions of different bodies of text or lecture videos about the topic. I also just stick to reviewing transits and reviewers that are already in bullet points or that are already summarized in order for me to retain the information better and that I don't get too overwhelmed. Now moving on, and this is the last habit, is that you have to set up yourself in a winning streak. So I only recently learned about the concept of a winning streak, and that it is actually sort of a philosophical guide that most successful people do. But I was actually always doing it, and I was applying it in my studies. Essentially, you need to be able to build momentum by setting up achievable goals from your bigger goals. You have to break down your end goals into smaller steps that you need to take in order to end up to your bigger goal and make sure that you are consistently hitting the mark. It doesn't mean that you have to be successful all the time and you leave no room for error, but you have to start with a streak, even if it is just a short one, and with the simplest goals. Just make sure that you are constantly achieving what you are setting yourself up for. This will condition your mind to persist and for your actions to be more in tune with your goals. When you eventually deal with mistakes, you'll be able to bounce back much better, and you'll be able to increase your resilience and trust that you'll still end up being successful despite your pit stop. So you can apply this for one example. When you fail an exam, start by understanding why. Then list down the things that you need to improve on and slowly build momentum from there. List down what you need to study more, list down the techniques that did not work for you, and maybe start by reading a few pages of a topic each day, even if the next test is weeks away. Do practice questions and then teach the lessons to others and track those small wins that you do. By the time the next exam comes, you'll feel more confident knowing that you've put in all the work. Even if the score you got is only 1 point higher than the past exam, then that's still progress, and that's still a sign that you're getting better. And next time, you know that you have to aim for higher and you know how to do this exactly. Moreover, a winning streak can also be fostered by celebrating every small progress. Every small win matters. When you pass a quiz, celebrate it. When you complete an assignment early, count on it. When you have successfully gone through this school week that you have been dreading, treat yourself. Momentum is everything, so stack every tiny wins on top of each other. Do this until they snowball into something bigger. And when you fail, because you surely will, then you'll be able to bounce back faster because you have a track record to prove. You are already a winner. At the end of the day, you shouldn't aim for perfection. You should aim for consistent action. As we come to an end, I need you to take note of these points. You don't have to be extraordinary in order to do extraordinary things. You just have to believe that even being the average version of you is already more powerful than you think. You don't need to have the perfect grades to graduate with honors. You just have to put up effort consistently. You just need grit. You need self-trust and you need willingness in order to grow. You just have to prove that to yourself. One day, one action, and one mindset shift at a time. So if I could graduate with honors as an average student, imagine what you can do. With all these tips and all these resources that are available on the internet, starting with this video, just imagine how far you will go. You just have to be decided that you are enough and that you are capable to do it. I believe in you. A lot of people believe in you. You have a lot of support coming from your friends, your families, your peers. Now it's time for you to do the same.